Hi, everybody. I am Jordan Ostroff with LegalEase Marketing, and this is Exhibit A Attorneys, where we interview attorneys and other experts across the country to talk about what it truly takes to be the Exhibit A of a successful attorney. Joining me today, Dan Nguyen. If you have not had the opportunity to engage with Dan, he is not just hilarious, but also an excellent attorney. So if you don't know Dan, he is an attorney, speaker, and a two-time best-selling author. His practice focuses on serving entrepreneurs and businesses in the areas of LLC, corporation formation, trademarks, franchising, and monthly virtual in-house attorney membership services for select clients. He's the host of the Intentional Entrepreneur podcast, and when he isn't with his family, he's trying to break 90 on the golf course. Something I try as well, although right now I'd be happy to break 90 on 9 holes, let alone 18 some of these days. So we are going to have Dan's contacts in here. So for anybody listening to this, his website is www.dxwin.com. That's Nguyen. LinkedIn.com/company/my screens just shut off. So this is going to be interesting. Wait, they're coming back. I don't know if you can still see me or not. Hopefully that won't happen again. So LinkedIn.com/company/law office of Daniel X Win with hyphens in between all that. LinkedIn personal, linkedin.com/in/dxwin. Facebook.com/LODXN, Facebook.com/DanXWin, and Twitter.com/DanXWinESQ. And for those of you who are watching this show, you will get that all in the comments. The reading of it was just for those who are listening on the podcast, because we got a couple complaints, and that was totally rightfully so for those of you who are listeners and not watchers. So today we're going to be talking about making your mark, the best tips to protect your brand and build your brand with Dan. We're going to talk about that first from the marketing perspective, then from the legal perspective. But before we get into that, I want to talk about our previous episode, The Aftermath, Medical and Legal Challenges in the COVID Age, with Rachel Permuth and Vipul Kila, who unfortunately Vipul dropped in the middle of it and wasn't able to get back because of some technical issues. But we still had a really great chat about how you prove COVID, some concerns to have in court, things like that. And so that was a really great conversation. And I just lost my screens again, so I hope I'm not dropping off, even though I can't see anything. No, we're good. All right, they're back now. So enough about that before I have that issue again, which is a weird one to have, but it's Monday. So Lord knows technology hates Mondays just as much as Garfield. Dan, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for having me on the show.
Anything that you want to add to that bio?
Yeah, so I have a pretty active YouTube channel. So you can just search my name, Dan X Nguyen, and the Intentional Entrepreneur. And so if you want to learn more about trademarks, franchising, LLC, we got a bunch of videos there. So hopefully, your listeners can find it useful.
Wonderful. And again, Dan has a personality and is awesome to talk to. He is not your normal stuffy attorney, hence why we're having him on here. I did have a question. So two-time best-selling author, what are the two books?
Yeah, so the first one is, I think right here. Point to that one. Pull up for sure. So this is actually on employment law for business owners. And so I
Don't
wrote
sue
this
me. Love it.
Yeah. So what business owners should know about hiring, firing, and keeping employees. So specifically tailored toward California law, but I think any business owner can take advantage of the general principles in this book here. So that one hit bestseller status, and then this is the most recent book here, Making Your Mark on Trademarks for entrepreneurs as well. So I've been lucky enough to have it sell well enough.
Oh, sorry, man. Threw you off
Yeah.
there.
Yeah. So I've been lucky to have it sell well enough on Amazon to hit bestseller status. So grateful for all the people who purchased the book, and hopefully they received a lot of value out of it.
Absolutely. So when we're talking about making your mark, the best tips to protect your brand, we're talking about trademarks?
Yes, we are talking about trademarks, correct.
Okay, so what is a trademark versus a patent versus trade secrets versus whatever along those lines?
Yeah, great question. And this is a very common question about, not just from attorneys, but non-attorneys and entrepreneurs as well. Is kind of think I kind of like to give this example. Think about like patents for like inventions, right? Anything that you have found useful every day, um, those are usually protected by patents. Copyrights. Think about movies, music, books. Those are general things that are protected by copyright law. And then slogans, names, um, even colors and sounds are protected by trademark law. So, BMW, the ultimate driving machine, Just Do It, are by Nike, very two popular slogans and two popular company names that are protected by trademark law.
Love it. And so, in terms of the best tips to protect your brand, obviously, one, buy Dan's book, Making Your Mark, and then two, hire him for any of the holes filled in. But for our listener watchers, any like 3 to 5 biggest tips?
Yeah, so I like to say, trademarks are like it's like asking yourself the question, when's the best time to plant a tree? And of course, if you know the answer to this question is the best time is 100 years ago, and the second best time is today. And the reason why is um, uh, trademark law is kind of both in use, meaning you do still have some rights by using the name exclusively in the marketplace, but there's a greater rights given when you have a federal registration, and that clock starts generally when you file and hopefully when you receive the registration. And so for a lot of companies or even entrepreneurs that want to protect their brand and want to build their brand, sometimes trademarks is not on the high list of priorities, right? It's usually about getting clients. And so um, you should make sure that you try to make it one of your priorities because it can really bite you in the butt later on. I actually did have a client that we, she came to me and said, "Hey, I want to do this trademark." So we did kind of a quick and dirty search on the United States Patent and Trademark Office. We found a very similarly confusing mark, and I said, "Hey, I don't think we can get this." Um, but by this time, she had done the full grand opening. She had media day. She spent all the money, and so um, you know, uh, she's at risk of infringing this particular mark, and may have to change all that stuff down the road. But you want to head all that stuff on the pass. You want to do your due diligence, of course. But then when you are at the position to say, hey, I'm comfortable going forward with it, go and submit the application, and so that you get the clock started on your rights here.
What is the most popular rebranding due to this issue? I mean, are there a bunch, or is it more like we would have heard of the first company and not so much the second company that and then had to do the rebrand?
So it's more, if I understand your question correctly, more about sometimes clients don't want to, kind of stick their head in the sand sometimes, right? And they'll try to go as long as they can for not addressing the issue. But rebrand, as you may know, it can get really expensive, right? And it's sometimes it's not a problem until it's a problem. But us as attorneys, we'll we'll try to make it a problem, or at least try to address it before it becomes a problem. But sometimes, business owners have other priorities, and then it becomes kind of too late, and we can't really do anything. Um, you know, we, we can't change the facts. Facts are the facts. So we try to soften the blow as much as possible, or try to negotiate. But no way out of it if the other party has exclusive rights to the name.
So, but like, I've heard examples of people did like a knockoff Jack Daniels book cover, and then Jack Daniels, paid for them to change it. I've heard examples where people like Dilly Dilly, or they did something with Bud Light, and then they did a whole thing on like a microbrew that they couldn't use that name. But like, is there a very popular, well-known company that did a rebrand because of this issue, or is it more like kind of these one-off stories that we hear?
Yeah, to my knowledge, there hasn't been one, huge, because usually it doesn't kind of get to that point, right? Usually
Okay.
the rights owner kind of nips it in the bud, and that's one of the things business owners and actually trademark owners have to do is they have to what we call police their own mark, right? They have to enforce their mark, otherwise they're going to lose certain rights in the name. And so, those particular ones, I think they're kind of clever on an entrepreneur sense, right? Because they're kind of these play on words. And I think Jack Daniels, if you've read the cease and desist letter, is actually kind of even keeled or not quite as your traditional attorney letter. And it went viral, I believe, on the internet. But those are the ones you've just heard, right? Imagine all the ones that cease and desist letters are going out every day, and it's just imagine the ones that has forced the business owner to change because of a threatening, looming lawsuit against them.
So basically, it's more like kind of you ever see Monty Python's Life of Brian?
It's been a long time.
Okay, so
Yeah.
it's a guy. It's about a guy who's. I mean, it's a comedy, but it's about a guy who's
Right.
born like 15 minutes after Jesus and like misses all the stuff from there. So it's more along those lines, like a name that we've never heard of because they were too late, because somebody else got to it, because somebody stopped them from it. Makes a ton of sense.
Right.
What you mentioned the federal registry along these lines. I mean, is there any benefit to registering at the state level, or that's just not as nearly as protected as you could be?
Yeah, so certainly if you can get the federal registration, that's the best because that'll protect you at all 50 states. Sometimes you're not qualified for it. So one of the things is, you have what we call interstate commerce. Basically, what that means is you have to do business in another state. Where there's some kind of nuances to it, but that's kind of the general rule. So if you're purely only doing business in one state, but you have kind of expectations to expand, then what I would advise is the client kind of stake their claim into the state registry. That way, if there's any other parties trying to register the mark later on, and if they're doing their own due diligence on a state level, they'll see your mark. And if it really kind of depends on their risk tolerance. But if they're conservative, it says, hey, person in California has only a state registration. We're in Texas, but I don't want to risk it because you might just get every other state except for California, and then you're just gonna have to change the name California. That's gonna be a real pain in the butt for you. So let's just pick another name. So there is some value to a state registration, um, kind of more on to putting other people on notice, so to speak. Other ones, especially in California, where marijuana has become more legal than in any particular state. So at a federal level, it's still technically illegal. So you can't get marijuana related trademarks. But in California, since it's legal there I believe on a recreational level, you can still get state trademarks. So those are particular situations where state trademark still has some value when you can't get a state federal registration.
Very interesting. Actually, just I was reading an article. I'm a big disc golfer, so they had an
Yeah.
article about the PDGA not approving any names that were based off of famous marijuana strains. I guess that had been a thing, 20 years ago, because disc golf was for hippies. I guess
Yeah.
then I don't know. Anyways, it was a very interesting thing to go through and see the difference of like what's okay in one area versus not in the other. It makes total sense from the marijuana side. So, anything else along the lines from the legal side you want to make sure we cover before we switch over into that sort of more marketing side of how you build a brand, how you make it worth it?
Yeah. So I think it's a good segue into the marketing side. So we talked about when's the best time to apply for a trademark too. So a lot of people don't know that you can apply for a trademark even when you're not using the name yet. And this is where a lot of business owners kind of get hung up, is that, hey, I'm not ready yet. It's kind of like the LLC, even the LLC conundrums. Hey, I'm not in business yet, and I don't want to form this, which at some point is understandable. But for business owners, entrepreneurs, they can file what's called an intent to use 1B application. And it still goes through the rigors of a regular application, but if it essentially passes, you get what's called basically a conditional approval, right? And you have about 3 years to bring the name or slogan or whatever you protected to the market. Now the benefit is that we call it priority date. Basically, when does your right to use the name start? Generally speaking, those are usually when you first started using the name in a particular state. But with an intent to use application, that date actually starts on the date of your intent to use application. So for a lot of business owners, it turns back the clock on terms of rights. It can up to about 3 years. And so if business owners, attorneys have a the legal standards bona fide intent to use the name, then go ahead and put in an application for a 1B, because that really starts the clock for you. And if you get it, it locks your place in line and essentially stops other people using a same or similar name or applying for a same or similar name, and then you can start enforcing your rights against others.
So now I'm going to have to make my second obscure reference of the day. Chuck Palahniuk has a book about, not about that, but that's part of it. There's like a company that trademarks all of these names for like cure for cancer drugs that don't exist yet or whatever. And then throughout the entire book, the guy's like, oh, and then I took, 5 pills of my cure for cancer. I don't remember which book that was. It was the one where the guy sees the future and gives the Super Bowl score in the halftime show. But I don't know, maybe somebody will jump in and help us out. Regardless, enough about my obscure, literary or pop culture references. None of this really matters in my standpoint, unless you're going to do something with it. You're going to build the brand. You're going to grow the company. You're going to sell these things across the whole country. You really want to create something out of it. And so I think you've done a phenomenal job really diving into, some sort of free advice, knowledge, wisdom along those lines to get people to hire you for the services. And so maybe I think it's helpful to talk about your journey a little bit more in terms of growing your practice.
Yeah. So this December, I'll celebrate 16 years as an attorney, and then 14 years on my own. I started off actually started working for a patent and trademark attorney. So that's kind of how I cut my teeth on it. And then I went to work for a business transaction attorney, doing some healthcare law, did some civil litigation. And then 2 years later, I opened up my own practice and trying to focus solely on entity formation and contracts and things like that. But what I was finding was that a lot of my business clients kept asking me for trademark help. And so then several years after that, I made a concerted effort to make it a part of my, bigger part of my practice. And, luckily I've had a lot of mentors in the area to help me and continue to help me. But how I've been able to grow my own practice is one, certainly all the videos on YouTube. So, and your listeners get a chance to go onto my YouTube playlist. I have like over 50 videos on YouTube, just on trademarks alone. And then I was able to spend some time. I wrote a book, which you mentioned before. So that book has helped a lot. And to me, it's been kind of like the 24-hour salesman, so to speak, both YouTube and the book, right? And so that's helped a lot. And just giving out free advice through these particular mediums has helped a lot in growing my practice. So incidentally enough, most of my practice has been by referral only. And so these particular information, the books and the website and the YouTube, has been great for I've given copies of the book to my referral partners. Says, hey, anyone who wants, that's a client of yours, I'm happy to give out a copy, as a gift from you to them. And then what YouTube has allowed me to do is, solidify my expertise in those particular areas. So they'll see my book, they'll see my website, but once they see my YouTube, it says, oh, he kind of knows what he's talking about. And so, hopefully they hire me.
Breezy, I love it. I was just going to ask you to pull the YouTube channel. So now the link to the YouTube channel is in the comments here. I'm not going to read it off because it's YouTube gobbledygook. But suffice it to say, just pull up the website or pull up the Facebook page or search for Dan on YouTube. So I want to break down what you said because there was a ton of great knowledge in that. So you spent a couple years before you opened your own practice working for other people. Do you find that, like, if you could go back in time to that day, would you have opened your firm sooner?
Wow, that's really tough because I did learn a lot working for those other people. And I would say I was fortunate to work for a lot of smaller firms. So I was kind of in the weeds of not just, client work, but also some administrative stuff, right? So would I have done it over again? Would I have gone sooner? For me, it's kind of hard to say again, because I learned so much. Hindsight, obviously 2020. So, with the knowledge I have now, I can open up my practice if I was still coming out of law school. But everyone's got their own path, right? Everyone's learns differently. And so, don't regret anything you've done in the past. Just think of it as as a learning or a stepping stone to what you want to do.
But it sounds like though you took a lot out of those prior jobs, not just the legal side of it, but a little bit more of that business savvy, a little bit more of that administrative knowledge. Is that correct?
Yeah, yeah. So, one of the things about um, working in those jobs is, and if listeners are looking to kind of go out on their own, is you have to be intentional about the work that you're doing, not just the legal work, but what are you looking to learn to take to the next one. Like one of my mentors said, it was not so much about going out on his own, but it's more about his learning style. It's like, hey, I took every case that I could, could take because I wanted to learn so much, right? And so I think if someone comes in that particular attitude and not just taking every single case, but what more do you want to learn out of the particular situation you are, then you have a better understanding when you want to open up your own practice or your own business.
And so you've talked a lot about working with business owner clients. Is there a reason for that? Like, is there a reason why you determined that to be your ideal client? Was it what you know? Was it what you wanted to do? Did you always know that was going to be your path?
I've always knew it was going to be path, but for some reason I don't know why. um,
Okay.
so I was a business major in college, and I went straight from college to law school. Uh, One thing I would do if I would look back, I would probably take in a gap year. I think I would have appreciated law school much better um, had I maybe worked for a year or two, getting some real world experience. But with that being said, when I was kind of finishing up my last year of college, and you know, our last semester we had classes full of seniors, and so the professor would say, "All right, what are your plans for next year, right?" Things like that. So I said, "Hey, I'm planning to go to law school. I'm planning on focusing on working with business owners to help them grow their business." Um, Mainly for because I was a business major, but obviously at that time I didn't know exactly how I was going to do it until um, I got into the weeds of doing it. Um, and as a business owner myself now, right, I can relate to a lot of the things that they're going through, and so I think that's where I exercise a lot of leverage in helping my clients. Is yeah, they hire me to help them with the legal stuff, but when there's opportunity and when they need it, then I'll provide them with some business counseling and have them kind of uh, um, understand a little bit more, decision part of their decision making process.
Yeah, it's interesting because I don't mean to demean the job of business consultants, but I have found that like at the highest level, everything you do has that little bit of business consulting in it. Like we are telling people, look, this marketing idea is never going to work. Let's not even bother trying it. You're telling them, look, there's this little bit part of your business that's going to totally tank the what we're setting up or what we're doing along those lines. And so, I say that not to demean business consultants, but instead to explain the benefit of having that knowledge base for really everything. The other thing you talked about was being very referral based. So, do you have like an ideal referral source that you're going after? Do you have people that have specific jobs or titles or engage with business owners that you're trying to get in front of more frequently?
Yeah, so that's actually one of the things I'm working on this year is how to really dial in my my referral business. Um, there hasn't really been any one particular, if I were to kind of generalize, obviously other attorneys that don't do these areas of law, but get a lot of referrals. So I actually have one great referral partner who he gets a lot of SEO juice on, business law, but he doesn't do business law. He did it for a little bit, and then how he narrowed his practice to estate planning. And so he sends me a lot of referrals. And CPAs are obviously a good choice, good source of business for us. And so we try to maintain those relationships. And so, thank you for asking that question. That's one of the things we're working on this year is really dialing in on who our essentially dream referral, a dream referral partner is, and so we can really harness the power of pre-qualified leads and how their sphere of influence, so to speak, in referring us business.
See, and you get that same meta bonus that we get is in essence, your ideal referral source for business owners are business owners that you could also help with your legal knowledge. Whereas for us, they're business owners so we can help with the marketing side. So do you find yourself having a lot of crossover between clients and referral sources, or not so much?
Can you rephrase your question?
Sure. So like it's one thing, I always thought it was funny. I started out as a criminal defense attorney when I first opened my practice. I was a
Mhm.
prosecutor. That's what I knew. And it
Mhm.
was hilarious because I was meeting with all these other professionals and other attorneys, and I was like, look, you're never going to need me unless you get like a DUI or there's a domestic thing or it's complete and utter BS. But then as we switched over into at least the marketing side, not again, same issue on my personal injury law firm, but from the marketing side, I'm always like, look, here's what I'm seeing in marketing. Like this will help you. What we focus on attorneys, but when I'm talking to, a lawyer coach, they're doing marketing to lawyers. When I'm talking to a court reporting company, they're doing marketing for attorneys. And so there's a ton of crossover where it's like, hey, look, here's some great insight for you. We can be a client of yours. We can send our clients to you, whatever it is along those lines. Do you find that same overlap between like doing the business and trademark stuff and trying to connect with other businesses that are going to come across your ideal clients?
Yeah, I think there's some because just by the very nature of my particular practice area, right? And so it's it's a very natural progression between the two, and like you said, overlap. So certainly, there's a lot of um, room for to go in either direction. And so, I think that's one of the things I really like about my particular practice here and the businesses and my clients that I serve, because there is a lot of opportunity to do kind of a wide range in a short area, so to speak.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And so you talked about, and then you talked about the books and the YouTube channel, which are like your 24-hour salesperson. And I'm assuming there's also an element of those that is helpful with your referral sources. I know you're giving them the book, but ultimately, like, look, people want to know you, they want to like you, and they want to trust you. And
Mhm.
do you find that the books and the YouTube channel and the videos and the content helps them trust you to be a great fit for their referrals as well?
Yeah, so the videos allow me to show off my personality, right? So obviously not every referral is a great fit. So if a referral partner, if we're kind of new in the relationship, right? And they want to kind of investigate, who I am and how do I treat my clients and what my demeanor is like, they can use those videos and see how, I talk on the videos and how I approach things without me spending another 2 hours with them or 3 hours with lunch or coffee, right? So I love the thing, evergreen content and how I can leverage technology. So I use those things so that usually as a kind of a on top, like with referral partners, usually we have to meet or at least talk over the phone or by Zoom at least one time, right? But all those other things really support and set myself being as an authority figure in the particular subject. And um, so yeah, those two things absolutely help a lot. And I've been reading. I just finished reading a book by Dan Kennedy about no BS brand building. And one of the things he says is like, hey, if you think newsletters is a good, um, writing a book will skyrocket you in terms of authority to in your particular field.
So when you're sitting down to create this content, when you're shooting the videos for the YouTube, when you sit down to write, maybe book number 3, if
Mhm.
that comes in the works, do you have certain videos geared towards referral sources and certain videos geared towards clients, or do you kind of overlap those into the same videos or the same content?
Yeah. So I don't have any particular target any particular way. For me, it's actually just being more consistent and putting out as much content as I can. Now that's not to say I think at a particular time I'll have particularly targeted videos to referral partners versus new clients or potential clients. But at this time, it's more about just volume and being consistent out there.
So when it comes to that either new law firm owner or that law firm owner who's really beginning that journey to grow a real practice, to start the marketing, whatever that looks like for them, do you have any guidance, insight, wisdom for them?
Yeah, yeah. So if I were to start all over again and start a new firm, I would actually start with a strategy called the Dream 100. So um, you know, if you're not familiar with Chet Holmes, he was kind of a big salesperson back a couple many years ago. But he wrote the book called The Ultimate Sales Machine. And the story goes is that he was working for a magazine that was in the bottom of the industry, and what he did was target the top 100 advertisers in their particular industry, and then he just went after them, and within 6 months they were in the top three in the industry. And so how you can apply this as a new lawyer is, target your top 100 referral partners, right? Whether if you're personal injury, probably chiropractors or even other attorneys. If you're a business owner, right? CPAs, other maybe insurance partners, but pick the top 100 and then just go after them and set up a referral relationship with them. Now, one of the downsides as attorneys, and I feel for you guys in Florida because there's no referral fee. While over here we can give pure referral fees. So if I send out, referral out to a friend of mine in California, he can pay me a referral fee, and I'll do it have any work. My understanding in Florida, there's you can't even pay referral fees if I'm correct.
There's a couple ways to go about it, but it's awkwardly limited, even more so than the model rules. You can't give anybody anything of value for recommending you for a case. Even a nice bottle of wine to another attorney is technically unethical and whatnot along those lines.
Yeah, so we have to play with under the rules that we're given, right? And so this is kind of where I envy kind of non-attorneys, because especially non-regulated or unlicensed, because this is kind of the wild west for referrals and finder's fees and commissions and all that. But if you dial it in correctly, then you can spend no money in advertising using the Dream 100 strategy. So I would look into that and then implement it for my firm if I were to give advice to a new firm owner.
And so I love that, especially at the beginning. I'm a big fan of starting a law firm with referrals, and not that you necessarily move away from referrals, but you transition to supporting those referrals with the YouTube channel, with the books, with the other marketing that comes along those lines. Did you have a specific reason for adding those to the referrals you're already getting? Or was that just that was what you liked? You liked writing, you liked shooting the videos. Can you walk me through that process a little bit?
Yeah, so I've obviously wanted to write a book, and I started writing my first book. Oh wow, maybe like 5 years ago, maybe 7 years ago, and I never got it done. But I finally kind of bit the bullet and focused and get it done. And so that was this first book. That was the first book. Don't Sue Me. And so that book is certainly, I use it for, again, referral partners, but send it out to potential clients too, where I if you notice it, it kind of stands out in my background, right, as opposed to all the other books, and it's on purpose. I made the book cover yellow on purpose because when was the last time you threw away a book someone gave you?
Never.
Right, never, right? When was the last time you threw away a business card someone gave you?
All the time. This morning, I found one in my desk that I don't know when I got it, and it went in the trash.
Right. So typically people tend not to throw away books. And then I made it really bright because I wanted to stand out on someone's bookshelf. So when they needed help, they know they could find it really easy. Not it's like, oh, what is that book? I can't remember the name. So that's my particular strategy for writing books. And I can tell you how it worked recently. I was introduced to a potential client probably about a year ago. Okay. And at that time, they didn't tell me they weren't ready. I kept following up. They kept ignoring me. But kind of early on in the relationship, I sent them a copy of my book. And so I know it's sitting on their shelf. And about a year later, they reached out back to me, say, I'm ready to do a trademark. And so,
did they tell you they had read the book, or did they tell you they just still had the book?
For that particular client, I know they said they had the book. I can't remember if they told me if they read the book. Okay. And so, but the purpose it served was obviously just for them to call me, right? It helps if they read the book, but the real goal is for them to pick up the phone and say, hey, I'm ready to move forward.
Oh no, absolutely. And it's funny to me because I've heard just as many success stories of, I had your book sitting on my dresser for 6 months and I never opened it. And finally, I was like, screw it. You take my money. You do what's in the book. I'm never going to read it. Just as much as I've heard, they're like, oh, I read your book and realized, you had to be the one that I went to. And so don't underestimate the impact of them not reading the book as a sales pitch, just as much as them reading the book as part of the sales process.
Right, right. Sometimes, they'll read the book and say, "Hey, this is way too complicated. Just do it for me."
No, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
So as we get towards the end of here, anything else you want to make sure we cover when it comes to protecting your brand from the legal side or building your brand up from the marketing side?
Yeah, no, I think we covered, the biggest thing, right, on the marketing side is, apply as soon as you can. Um, Here's the thing about trademarks that most, all attorneys won't tell you, tell business owners, you know, and it's very understandable from the business owner's point of view. It's not something that will make money for you right away, right? It's not like buying ads where you can calculate the return on ad spend or return on investment, right? So I understand why a lot of business owners are kind of hesitant to, like, hey, this is not going to put another dollar in my pocket, or at least another calculable dollar in my pocket. But I usually share the story with them is, you know, um, one of my clients came to me and they said, hey, we want to buy this other trademark, and we want to pay. They were willing to pay about 5 figures for it, right? And it was, I think it was right at that point where I said, hey, this this is why trademarks are valuable, right? Yeah, there's the business protection part of it, but if you're doing business right and you have an exit plan, selling the IP is part of it, has value in the exit, and usually there will be, there's a goodwill line item sometimes on a purchase. And so that is really the value that it can increase the value of your business, by getting a trademark. You can license it, right? We're talking about old movies. I was doing a presentation about monetizing trademarks, and I shared this clip about, if you've seen Spaceballs and it's yogurt, hey, merchandising, right? Lunch pail, and then there's a flamethrower at the end, right?
Yep. And
So,
the toilet
so
paper,
that's
yeah.
toilet paper, right? Right. So you can, business owners and attorneys, it's not really their fault, but they're kind of short-sighted into maximizing the value of a trademark, right? So um, you can really monetize your trademarks if you do it right. But remember, you still have to lay the foundation. You still have to build a big brand. Um, if I could recommend a book besides my own book, but I just finished this, so I do want to share it. It's, if you're not a fan of Dan Kennedy, I am. He's not for everyone. He's kind of blunt.
I am I am only not a fan of Dan Kennedy because of his personal feelings that he shared at a large lawyer function. I do think his marketing knowledge is great. I just I'll leave it at that based
Yeah,
upon what he
he's
said.
personal things aside. I think he's well known as a um, as a marketing genius, I guess, right? And his methodology, is generational, right? Um, but if you're a business owner, I think pick up this book because it shows you how to build a brand, um, and the specific methods that they use. And I think, I'm going to kind of take some of these concepts and share them with my clients, because it's it's worth it's worth sharing to them, and how they can, not just, it'll help them help them absorb the couple grand they just spent, having me get a trademark, and say, or how do I make my money back? Um, but um, but yeah, I think, you got to start early, and then, start. You got to protect it, right? So you got to police your trademarks, and then, find out how you can cash in on it, whether through licensing or franchising, or some other particular deal.
Love it. All right. So our next episode, for those of you that have loved Dan's insight, next no, not next week, later this week, Thursday at 1:30, we're going to have Wendy Witt on. Wendy's going to talk about how you design your dream life as a lawyer. For those of you who don't know Wendy, she is awesome. One, but two, has gotten into some wonderful arguments with, let's go with a-hole attorneys that did not prioritize, I don't want to say didn't prioritize their own lives, certainly didn't prioritize the lives of their employees, their associates, etc. And so Wendy truly walks the walk, and I am delighted to have her on Thursday at 1:30 Eastern Time to talk about designing your dream life as a lawyer. With that being said, though, Dan, I'm not going to let you go without your final takeaway. So to that new business owner, new law firm owner, or law firm owner finally ready to make the mark on running a true business instead of just having a job, what is your diamond nugget of wisdom? What is your biggest, most important takeaway for them so that they too can become the exhibit A of a successful attorney like you and I?
Yeah, learn how to delegate right away. For a very long time, I was thinking more as a lawyer and not a business owner until I finally hired my first assistant. And I've been able to be more productive, be more efficient, and make more money by having a lot of people think it's going to cost you more money. Yes, money's going to go out the door, but if you do it right, you're going to bring so much more money in and focus just on revenue producing activities. So learn how to delegate as fast as you can.
I love that so much. Yes, it's like lawyers, I've heard people complain about the 10, 15, 20 bucks an hour, and then you sit down and you're like, the last time you went to lunch with somebody, how much money did you make? And they're like, $5,000. All right, the last time you did this, how much money did you make? All right, 10 grand. I got 2 cases from that. I got a case from this. I got here. Great. So now imagine if for those $15 an hour, 20 bucks an hour, you had that much more time to get the $5,000 and $10,000 cases. And they're like, all right, it finally clicks. So I love that you shared that. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
And to anybody listening who is struggling through this process, we do have our Lawyer Marketing 101 course. You can find that at marketmylawfirm.com. That'll go into a lot of the stuff that Dan and I talked about today as it comes to creating your ideal client, looking at where they're going to be, figuring out the platforms, hammering out referral sources, coming up with ways to build a relationship with referral sources, etc. So marketyourlawfirm.com, Lawyer Marketing 101. And again, thank you so much for being here today, Dan.
All right, my pleasure.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Exhibit A Attorneys. If you're interested in becoming the Exhibit A of a successful attorney, please check us out at LegalEaseMarketing.com, EASE.